Hi, I'm Jackson Tennyson, an independent textile artist and fashion design student who typically designs from a conceptual and world building perspective. I'm making this video because although there's a growing presence of designers online, I still think there's a lack of people showing how they develop their concept and thinking rather than just the construction of a piece. I believe it can be really helpful for us as creatives to see each other's process, and having more people on the conceptual design side of fashion sharing their process would have been really useful for me a few years ago. Today, I'm showing off my project Household Host, but I'll also be taking you through the steps by which I developed a concept and then translate it into physical work. I'd like to begin at the end, though, by showing off my final piece. This textile sculpture, entitled Household Host, is a work focused on our globalized, ever-growing web of production and how it distances consumers from the origins of our own products. This piece visualizes our loss of context surrounding how and where our goods are made as an infectious strangeness. We have come to live in alien environments filled with items whose origins we do not know. To show this, I utilized fabric manipulation techniques to create meaty, organic textures which seem to germinate around a regular household chair. My concept and art direction were based on ideas drawn from books like Sophie Thanhouser's Worn: A People's History of Clothing, The Future's Degrowth, and Alden Wicker's To Die For. In this piece, I interpreted these writers' work, combined it with my own fashion industry-focused perspective, and my experience working at a company using automation to divide workers from their customers, to design a piece that makes the argument that when we don't understand how the products we're surrounded by are made, we come to live in alien environments. My process for developing a concept comes in 3 stages: building my library, building my web, and expanding that web. If this sounds like an interesting project you'd like to know more about, or if you'd like to know more about another creative's concept building process, then let's continue. The first step, the library, is just what I call the catalog of things I find interesting and are consistently on my mind. The things in my library are not yet stuff I'm researching for a concept, just themes or media that I enjoy or that show up enough in my life that I make a note of them. Really, the process of building a library is just living your life with curiosity and sensitivity. Examples of things in this category include ecology, Minecraft, textile craft, history, particularly medieval, armor, leatherwork, cannibalism, queer theory, activism, knitting, my foam roller, milkweed, wilderness gothic by Al Purdy, and a local trail. Next, we get into the stage where the concept forming actually begins. I call this building the web. It's when I either intentionally or organically begin to connect things in the library. The connections can be a mood, appearance, their use, or just the realization the two things are caused by similar social systems. In this case, the things that inspired the initial project were globalized industry, particularly fashion, sweet green robo-kitchens, general alienation from creation, and an upcoming gallery. Anyone who works anywhere in fashion is aware of how difficult it is to actually trace the production of a garment from farm to store, and of course this applies to many products, not just clothing. At the time this project was beginning, I was working at Sweet Green, which went from having an open kitchen concept to trying to open robo-kitchen stores with almost no visible human staff. Although that divide is not as dramatic as the divide between consumers within the capitalist core and people making their goods, I'm still suspicious of any company making moves to remove workers from the customer's view. Alongside that, seeing how few people understand the idea that their clothes are all handmade and aren't interested in having any repair skills. The growing gap between production and consumer is kind of constantly on my mind and very in the cultural conversation at the moment. Then I saw the announcement for an upcoming gallery and symposium built around the theme of recontextualize. So I started thinking about these interests in terms of how our lack of context surrounding the creation of an item changes that thing's relationship to us and its place in our home. After that, I entered the last step, which is then expanding the web. This means research and experimentation. On the research end, I read the books Worn: A People's History of Clothing, The Future's Degrowth, and The Book to Die For. I read more articles about the specifics of what the company I was working at was doing, and why their initial plans for those robot kitchens failed. I spent time just learning about the production process of goods that prior to this project I wouldn't have been able to explain how they were made, especially mass-produced items. This turned into visualizing these objects as living alien forms, things born in a place we can't conceptualize. This system gives objects that are part of our daily lives an unknowable origin, wherein the great incomprehensible scale of our supply chain obscures the dangers of a lack of material transparency. Of course, this is a bit theatrical, but I think there's real value in looking at and understanding that the scale of this is so beyond an individual that we have created an esoteric horror out of locked shipping containers and lackluster factory audits. I knew I wanted to make a textile piece, so I started making swatches. I had a vision of meat growing, like plant life, new elements of the web, and new elements of the web kept latching on. There are these great huge reeds outside of my apartment, and the shape of them has just always been so perfect. I knew I would want to reference it in something someday. Those reeds and their shape combined with visions of like bug feelers and also that fungus that infects bugs and controls their bodies. And then weirdly enough, as I was doing swatches, I had as my background audio this like Minecraft infection playthrough video, and it had the mod they were playing with had this one zombie design that was so nasty and had these wiggly feelers that it just kind of fit into the forms I was already looking at, and it helped finalize the vision. So that's an example of a weird way things from the library end up connecting onto the web, even if they feel less serious than a lot of the other elements. So that was the last step of the exclusively concept building phase of the project. And then I made it. The last important step is a cutoff, I think. It was time to sit down and start making. I plan to submit this to a gallery helped with this because it gave me a deadline. Like many artists, I struggle with just aiming and then trusting your aim and shooting instead of trying to refocus. I've never done a textile piece like this before. I usually just make garments, and most textile experiments are just swatches. So this was a very exciting project. I'm about to begin working on my senior thesis collection. I plan on recording the development process for that on this channel, so this video is really more of a practice run so I can stumble my way through the process. So if you found this interesting, I plan on continuing, and I hope you continue watching. Thank you.